Fast food wasn't always about racing through drive-thrus at 11 p.m. or watching the same 5 chains repeat at every highway exit. Long before corporate America turned burgers into a science, there were pioneers, immigrants with wild ideas, entrepreneurs, who had no business succeeding but did it anyway. People who literally invented the industry from nothing. Today, we're going back to where it all started. The 10 oldest fast food chains that are somehow, miraculously, still serving food in 2025. These aren't just old restaurants. These are the places that taught America how to eat on the move, created menu items that defined generations, and survived everything from the Great Depression to a global pandemic. Some of these names you absolutely know. Others? You've probably driven past them 100 times without realizing you were looking at a piece of living history, but all of them were doing this before your grandparents were born. Let's find out how they pulled it off. Number 1 on our list is Nathan's famous hot dogs. Let's start at the very beginning, with a Polish immigrant who had absolutely nothing to lose. In 1916, Nathan Handwerker was working at a hot dog stand on Coney Island, watching his boss charge 10 cents per hot dog and make a fortune doing it. Nathan had a thought. What if I just undercut him? So he opened his own stand right next door. Same location, same product, half the price. He called it Nathan's Famous, which was bold considering nobody knew who Nathan was yet. But here's the problem with selling hot dogs for a nickel. People thought they were cheap garbage. This was 1916. If something cost half as much as the competition, customers assumed it was made from whatever the factory swept off the floor that morning. Nathan had to convince people his hot dogs were actually good. His marketing strategy was absolutely genius. He hired people to dress up in nice clothes, stand outside his stand, and eat his hot dogs where everyone could see them. He paid actors to wear white medical coats, making them look like doctors who trusted Nathan's Famous enough to eat there. And then, in his very first year, he held a hot dog eating contest on the 4th of July. That contest still happens every year. Over a century later, Nathan's Famous hot dog eating contest is an American tradition broadcast on ESPN, all because some immigrant needed to prove his 5-cent hot dogs weren't trash. Nathan's wife, Ida, created the secret spice blend that made those hot dogs legendary. That recipe is still used today, over 100 years later, at hundreds of Nathan's Famous locations across the country. What started as one desperate man undercutting his boss became the birthplace of the entire American fast food industry. Nathan's Famous didn't just survive. It became the proof that innovation, smart marketing, and an actually good product could build something that lasts forever. Real quick, 99% of you haven't liked this video or subscribed, so please consider doing that if you want to take more trips down memory lane. Also, write me a comment below with which one of these you actually remember going to. Number 2 on our list is A&W. 3 years after Nathan's Famous opened, another immigrant was about to change everything. In 1919, Roy W. Allen set up a root beer stand in Lodi, California. The occasion? A welcome home celebration for World War I veterans. It was the perfect moment for something new. That root beer stand worked so well that Allen teamed up with Frank Wright in 1922, combining their initials to create A&W. And here's what's wild. A&W didn't just sell root beer. They revolutionized how restaurants could grow. In 1926, A&W became one of the first companies in America to use franchising. Before A&W, if you wanted to expand your restaurant, you had to open every location yourself, fund it yourself, and manage it yourself. A&W said, "What if other people opened our restaurants for us?" That model became the blueprint for every major chain that followed. By the 1970s, get this, A&W had more locations than McDonald's. Let that sink in. There was a moment in history when A&W was bigger than McDonald's. Their frosty mugs of root beer, served ice-cold at drive-in locations, made them an American institution. A&W also pioneered the first drive-in service in California in 1923. You didn't walk inside. You pulled up, and servers brought food to your car. That concept shaped car culture and fast food for the next century. But A&W had something even more important: an actual good product. Their root beer wasn't just marketing. It was legitimately great, made from a secret blend of herbs, bark, spices, and berries that people still swear is the best root beer ever made. Those frosty mugs weren't just for serving drinks. They were merchandise, collectibles, symbols of the brand that customers wanted to take home. A&W survived the Great Depression. They survived wars. They survived the rise of McDonald's and every other competitor that tried to crush them. In 2025, A&W is still here, still serving that same root beer, still using those frosty mugs, proving that if your product is actually good, trends don't matter. Number 3 on our list is White Castle. Now let's head to Wichita, Kansas, where two men were about to invent something that would change American food forever: the fast food hamburger. In 1921, Billy Ingram and Walter Anderson opened White Castle and introduced America to the slider. That little square burger you know today, White Castle invented it. But creating the slider was the easy part. The hard part was convincing Americans that ground beef wasn't going to kill them. In 1906, Upton. Sinclair published The Jungle, exposing the horrifying conditions inside meatpacking plants. Americans were terrified of ground beef for over a decade. Hamburgers existed, but people didn't trust them. White Castle had to overcome a decade of fear if they wanted to succeed. Their solution was radical transparency. They built their restaurants entirely out of white porcelain and stainless steel, making everything look spotlessly clean. They made the kitchens completely open so customers could watch their burgers being made in real time. Every worker wore white uniforms. The message was clear: you can trust us. But White Castle didn't just solve the trust problem. They revolutionized how burgers were made. They created the assembly line kitchen, streamlining production so efficiently that every major chain copied them. Their square patties with 5 holes cooked faster and more evenly, meaning customers got hot food in moments. At 5 cents each, White Castle made burgers affordable for working families during the Depression. Here's the wildest part: White Castle refused to franchise. Every other chain was expanding through franchising, but White Castle kept tight control over every single location. That decision meant slower growth, but higher quality, and it's why White Castle maintained its reputation for over a century. Today, White Castle is still family-owned, still serving those iconic sliders, still operating, primarily in the Midwest where it all started. They proved that you don't have to be the biggest to be legendary. Number 4 on our list is Kewpee hamburgers. White Castle was so successful that other people immediately tried to copy them. In 1923, just 2 years after White Castle opened, Kewpee hamburgers launched in Flint, Michigan, becoming the second oldest hamburger chain in America. Kewpee got its name from the Kewpee doll, a popular character at the time. And while they were clearly inspired by White Castle's success, Kewpee brought their own innovation: curbside service. This was before drive-thrus existed. Customers would pull up to the restaurant, and staff would bring food directly to their car. It was revolutionary. Kewpee also helped popularize the idea that fast food didn't mean you had to get out of your vehicle. They were training Americans to expect convenience, setting the stage for the drive-thru culture that would dominate decades later. At its peak, Kewpee had multiple locations across the Midwest. Today, only a handful remain, mostly concentrated in Ohio. The chain never became a giant, but its influence on the industry is undeniable. Every time you order food from your car, you're benefiting from ideas Kewpee helped pioneer over a century ago. Number 5 on our list is White Tower. If Kewpee was inspired by White Castle, White Tower wasn't even trying to hide it. Founded in 1926 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, White Tower looked at White Castle and said, "We're doing exactly that." They copied the white building architecture. They copied the menu. They copied the name. It was shameless, and for decades it worked. At its peak in the 1950s, White Tower operated over 230 locations across the country, serving cheap hamburgers and coffee using White Castle's exact playbook. White Tower proved something important about the early fast food industry. If a model worked, everyone copied it. There were no intellectual property lawyers protecting restaurant concepts. If you had a good idea, 10 competitors would replicate it within 5 years. White Tower eventually faded away, unable to differentiate itself once the market became crowded. But its existence shows just how powerful White Castle's influence was. When someone creates a revolutionary business model, everyone pays attention. Number 6 on our list is KFC. Let's move south to Corbin, Kentucky, where a 40-year-old gas station owner was about to accidentally invent an empire. Harlan Sanders wasn't trying to build a fast food chain. He was just trying to make a living. Sanders started serving fried chicken to travelers at his gas station in 1930. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a side hustle. But that chicken was so good that word spread, and soon people were driving to Corbin specifically for Sanders' food, not for gas. Over the next decade, Sanders perfected his recipe, eventually developing the secret blend of 11 herbs and spices that made Kentucky Fried Chicken famous. He also pioneered the pressure cooker method, allowing chicken to cook faster without sacrificing quality. But here's the crazy part. Sanders didn't actually build KFC into a massive chain until after he lost everything. In the 1950s, a new interstate highway bypassed his restaurant, destroying his business overnight. At 65 years old, Sanders was broke. So he did the only thing he could. He hit the road with his pressure cooker and his secret recipe, convincing other restaurant owners to serve his chicken in exchange for a small fee per piece sold. That was the birth of KFC franchising. By the 1960s, KFC had exploded into a national chain. Sanders sold the company in 1964, but remained the brand's mascot, his face and white suit becoming one of the most recognizable images in fast food history. Today, KFC operates in over 150 countries, proving that it's never too late to build something legendary. Number 7 on our list is Dee's Drive-In from 1932. During the Great Depression, when most businesses were closing, a man named Clayton Dee opened a drive-in restaurant in Utah. Dee's Drive-In survived the worst economic crisis in American history by giving people something affordable and comforting during impossibly hard times. Dee's wasn't about innovation. It was about consistency and value. Simple burgers, fries, and shakes served at prices working families could afford. The drive-in model meant lower overhead, which kept prices down even as the economy collapsed. What's remarkable about Dee's is that it still exists today, operating locations in Utah nearly a century later. Most chains from the 1930s didn't make it past the 1950s, but Dee's found its niche and never left. It's a regional favorite that locals swear by, proof that you don't need to conquer the world to succeed. Number 8 on our list is Krystal. That same year, down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Rhodey Davenport Jr. and J. Glenn Sherrill opened Krystal, bringing the White Castle model to the South. Krystal's burgers looked almost identical to White Castle's. Sliders, small, square, and steamed on a bed of onions. But Krystal wasn't just copying White Castle. They were adapting it for Southern tastes and Southern culture, creating a regional identity that resonated deeply across the Southeast. Krystal became a cultural institution in the South, the same way White Castle dominated the Midwest. Today, Krystal operates hundreds of locations across the southern United States, still serving those iconic little square burgers to customers who've been eating them for generations. It's proof that regional loyalty can be just as powerful as national dominance. Number 9 on our list is Dairy Queen. In 1938, a man named J.F. McCullough invented soft-serve ice cream. Not ice cream. Soft serve. That specific texture, that perfect consistency, didn't exist before McCullough figured it out. McCullough and his son partnered with Sherb Noble, who opened the first Dairy Queen in Joliet, Illinois in 1940. On opening day, they served over 1,600 customers, selling soft-serve cones for just 5 cents. The demand was so overwhelming that they knew they had something special. Dairy Queen wasn't technically fast food in the traditional sense. It was frozen treats. But it followed the same model: quick service, affordable prices, and a product people couldn't get anywhere else. That soft-serve formula became Dairy Queen's foundation, and the chain expanded rapidly throughout the 1940s and 50s. Over time, Dairy Queen added burgers and hot food to the menu, transforming into a full fast food chain. But the blizzard, introduced in 1985, reminded everyone what Dairy Queen did best: frozen desserts. Today, Dairy Queen operates thousands of locations worldwide, still serving that same soft serve that started it all. Number 10 on our list is McDonald's. And finally, we arrive at the giant. In 1940, brothers Richard and Maurice McDonald opened a barbecue restaurant in San Bernardino, California. It did fine, but it wasn't special. Then in 1948, they closed down, redesigned everything, and reopened with a revolutionary concept: the speedy service system. They stripped the menu down to just burgers, fries, and drinks. They made the kitchen an assembly line. They eliminated car hops and made customers order at a window. Everything was designed for speed and efficiency. It worked so well that a milkshake machine salesman named Ray Kroc noticed. Kroc saw something the McDonald brothers didn't. This system could scale infinitely. He convinced them to let him franchise McDonald's across the country, and by the 1960s, McDonald's was everywhere. The McDonald brothers eventually sold the company to Kroc for $2.7 million. Today, McDonald's is the largest restaurant chain on Earth, operating over 40,000 locations in more than 100 countries. But here's what's important: McDonald's didn't invent fast food. Nathan's Famous did that. A&W pioneered franchising. White Castle created the hamburger assembly line. KFC proved fried chicken could scale nationally. McDonald's just took every innovation that came before and perfected it. These 10 chains didn't just survive. They defined what American food culture would become. Some invented entire product categories. Others pioneered business models that every corporation uses today. A few just made something so good that people kept coming back for over a century. What's wild is how many of these started as desperate immigrant stories or side hustles that accidentally became empires. Nobody was trying to build a global corporation. They were just trying to pay rent and feed their families. If you've eaten at any of these places, or if your grandparents told you stories about them, drop a comment. Tell us which one hits different. And if you're just learning about them now, welcome to the history of every burger, fries, and shake you've ever eaten, because everything you take for granted today, these 10 chains invented it. And somehow, against every odd, they're still here.